Change requires change. Seems redundant and a little silly, but I also think it makes sense. There's a lot of good quotes or good messages out there on how to change and how to make changes. And I don't remember the exact phrasing of this one, but one that I really like is you do the same things and you get the same results. If you want something different, you have to do something different. And the concept in the book Atomic Habits focuses on making small changes with big effects. That atomic word is the double entendre. I think it's one of the best book titles ever. Small changes, atomic level, for huge impact and long term change. Atomic impact. So, now, that being said, small change is probably the key to larger change, but there are moments where dramatic shifts make a difference. This all in aspect. Think about getting into a body of water, a swimming pool, the ocean, maybe. A lot of people will just literally dive in, and we use that metaphor a lot. Just dive in, go all in. Now, the diving in is often going to be higher risk. People do that with gambling, they go all in, or asking someone out directly, saying, I'm interested in you. It's an all in approach. There's no question mark about this. It's clear. It's often higher risk, high reward. You typically will know in an all in situation the outcome immediately. Whereas a tiptoe, if you're going into a pool slowly, you don't know yet if that person's going to get fully submerged. Maybe it ends up being too cold and they back out. They might have gotten halfway in and they're like, no, I'm not doing this. So you watch for longer as that person tiptoes in. Maybe you are the one tiptoeing in, and it's a little on the fence. Is it going to happen? Is it not? And then watching someone go all in, well, immediately. In a swimming pool situation they're in, there's no question mark. They've made the choice. Now maybe they get right back out because it's too cold, but even that scenario immediately. They've jumped in and now they're out over the course of a few seconds versus minutes potentially. Someone going all in with a bet, they know where the money is. Someone asking someone out, you typically will get that yes or no right then, as opposed to a slow build up. So now that all in isn't necessarily the wisest decision every time. But the point that I'm getting at here is the importance of making change to see change. And that oftentimes the effort that you put in is the effort you get back. And I do want to keep space for the impact of small change and how big of a deal that is. And it's often the go-to, and it's often the starting place when I'm doing therapy or any work on myself is what small change can I make for big impact. And at the same time, there are moments where all or nothing helps a ton, or it can make a big difference. For example, the few areas that I've seen this when I was going through grad school, it's a very busy time. I was working and going to school and had a lot of personal requirements. I'm very family motivated and spending time with family and friends and volunteering and these things that really mattered. And there just wasn't a lot of room for extra. And I decided to prioritize everything related to school and then all of my work and volunteer commitments. And most of my volunteer commitments, or all of them perhaps, were church related. And that's just all I did, really. And it was easy in a sense. I look back at it and I don't remember that being a challenging period of time. Interestingly, when I look back at my life and see challenging periods, they come from indecisiveness. When I have one foot in and one foot out, when I'm testing the waters for a prolonged period of time. Another example is getting married, and it's an all or nothing thing. You're either committing or you're not. And once you can make that decision, it's easy. And maybe along the way, you have to refine what that commitment looks like and better understand yourself and the relationship. But at the end of the day, that's the commitment. There is no other option. My marriage is easy because it's the only option by choice for both of us. And when we leave too many options on the table, things become hard. If I was in school and I was saying, well, maybe I should quit and go to a different school, or maybe I should stop working, it's like, this is the way my life looks right now. And it's technically okay, and it's all moving in a good direction. So I'm committed to this for what was for me 2 years of graduate school. And there's a bug just flying around. This might be an eventful recording. A little gnat. Just going right in my face. Anyway, being all in with it made a difference. Same with my marriage. If I was thinking, eventually this might not work out, or we might grow apart, or, maybe there's some better options out there, or, I'm not so sure about the commitment, then being all in starts to disappear, and I'm actually not going to be everything I can be in that relationship. There is no other option on the table. That's joyfully my choice, and it makes this easy. And there's lots of reasons why marriages can be hard, but whenever I hear people talk about the wishy-washiness, I'm like, you can just eliminate that by following through on your commitment. And this is true for any commitment, whether it's a work commitment or a personal commitment where you said, I'm going to read this many books this year. Then do it. It's not hard anymore. Follow through on the commitment. Go all in. If you want that to happen, just make it happen. So, making change. And, the examples I gave are change that I wanted to happen. I wanted this education and this career path. I wanted to be married. And actually, when I sat down years ago to look at my life and say, here are the things that I want in my life, and I actually think it was about 5 things. I wrote them down and I asked myself to the side of them, what am I doing to make these happen? Okay. And all of them had some way that I was moving forward towards that goal. The only one that didn't was I knew I wanted to be married. And the biggest excuse I could tell myself was, well, I'm still working on myself. And so that's okay right now. And the reality was, you're always going to be working on yourself. So I had to reconcile that for, ended up being not very long, very short amount of time, like hours to days, just sitting with myself and being like, you're more mature and healthy than other people who are married, and you are more immature and unhealthy than others. You're not perfect, but you're not the worst, and you're not the best. I'm like, okay, I'm going to make efforts and stumble and fail my way forward and hope to hurt as few people along the way, myself included. That's the same with every endeavor you take. But you can't wait for perfection. So that's when I was honest with myself and said, okay, I'm not seeing the change that I want in this category. And so what do I need to do? And the reality was I just need to put myself out there more to date, not force a relationship to happen, but I was going to the same places every week, doing the same things. The chances of me meeting someone new were pretty low overall. And then so I attempted online dating, which I've been opposed to, and I no justification to not do it anymore. Dude, this is the route before you, unless you're going to be going out doing new things. And I was building my business at the time and doing other stuff that it didn't make sense to do new things. So that was the easy route, and it worked out. And that happens for me pretty much every time when you just hit this point. I think a lot of people can relate, where they just hit a point where they say, "This thing isn't where I want it to be, and I truly want it to be different." And that truth statement is the key, because there's a lot of things in our lives that we might say, "I want this to look different." But the change required, I actually still want to keep that thing. And I don't want to make the change. Someone who says, well, I know my life would be better if I wasn't drinking. I tend to drink too much, and I always say I'll have this much, and I have more, and I really can't afford the amount I'm drinking right now and everything. But my life would be better if I got rid of it. But I do enjoy it enough. That person's not all in. There's um, a good quote in the New Testament. I can't remember what book. That's often misunderstood, but it's essentially Christ describing following him. And to follow him, one is required to hate his family. And that seems odd to hear that. And that full passage there with the context, what you'll understand if you pay attention is that we're not commanded to hate family. We're commanded to have our love for Christ instead, and our commitment to Him be so great that nothing comes close, that there is no other option. He is number one. And that's very obvious when you read the book. The criticisms aren't well thought out, because when you read the rest of it, you hear how important it is to love neighbor and love family, and gosh, even to support family and be present with them and care. It's very family centric book, which is why that's a standout. If you've read the whole thing, you're like, what's going on? It's a commitment level. Are you all in with this commitment? Are you saying yes? And don't say yes if you're not going to follow through. Your word's important. And this is what we mess up with change all the time, is making legitimate changes can be really hard. And you hear this a lot with addiction work. And big change that people want to make is people say, well, don't say you're never going to do it again, because that, you set yourself up for failure. And I think there's a lot of wisdom there. And I also think that that statement misses the point of, well, I'm never going to do this again. It's not about doing the bad thing again, or it's not about staying in your current state. It's about the commitment towards the new state and the new way of being. We're not saying, I'm not going to do this anymore. We're saying, I'm going to be that. Because if we focus on that, it makes it easier to avoid what we don't want to be. If I'm constantly, here's a metaphor I love. If you've ever been skiing, which I have not, I've snowboarded on a very safe slope. But picture a ski slope with trees. That skier is going down the slope, and it's important that they don't hit a tree. There's many trees on the slope, and they have to avoid them. Is it going to be better for them to think about avoiding trees or think about staying on the path? If they think about avoiding trees, their thoughts are going to be about the trees. They're going to be thinking about the trees. However, if your only focus is just stay on the path, you don't have to avoid the trees, because the trees are not on the path. The safe route down is safe. What you're avoiding is steering away. You're avoiding, to bring this into more relatable life, you're avoiding the temptations that pull you away. You're avoiding the bad behaviors. You're avoiding the things that steal from your change. Naturally, that is happening by just staying in the path and focusing on your change and your growth trajectory. You don't have to stay away from alcohol or pornography or drugs or affairs or bad paths. You don't have to avoid them. You just have to run towards the thing that's good and the change that you want and the commitment you're making. One of the best pieces of advice I ever got on temptation is to just flee from it. People say, how do I avoid doing this? Well, just stay away from it completely. Is that always extremely easy? No, it's actually often not. But if someone's addicted to alcohol, don't go to places with alcohol. You might say, well, every time I'm at a restaurant, my friends order something and it's not technically a bar, but it's a restaurant. Then don't go out with your friends. Then change your friends. If you want a positive change, you often have to make big sacrifices. So stop focusing on white knuckling through negative things in your pursuit of change and just focus on the actual change that you want. You want to be a musician? Practice music. Do things get in the way of it? Get rid of them. Practice music. Are the distractions helpful in any way? No. Get rid of them. Practice music. Oh, well, I have this that just practice the music. Your excuses are a waste of time. Understand a lot of what I'm saying is preaching to me right now, but it's stuff that I've seen in my life and others. If you just commit to the change that you want, then it'll happen. You just make that change. And there might be a small percentage of you that are saying, oh, yeah, but what about? Only a very small percent of you is that what about statement actually valid. Most of the time, it is not valid. The problem is other people can't tell you that, because if you think it's valid, then to you it's just criticism and they're wrong. So the reflection question needs to be, am I just making excuses? How bad do I want this? And sometimes you just can't get it. I understand that. Most of the time, and most of the people that I have worked with professionally and not professionally, they just don't want it enough. You have to want that thing. And there's a lot of reasons why there might be obstacles to it. And you can work through those. So if you want change, you have to change. Focus on the positive goal and just look at that. And don't let the negativity in. Only let the positive things in. Only let the path forward be seen. Avoid the obstacles. Just look at the path. So that's that. Happy Monday, y'all.